She's been on a date with a girl. Total disaster. She was a complete idiot. What it was is I'd been on one of these websites where you find girls, and I'd found this very pretty, Matilda she was called, this very pretty girl. Didn't delve too deeply into her profile, but her picture was convincing, so I thought, yeah, I'll ask her out. So I went on a date this evening, but immediately it was clear the chemistry wasn't there. You know, I went to greet her and kissed her on her cheek, then on the other side of the cheek, and then back on the first side like they do in the films. But I was a bit nervous, and I don't think either of us really knew what we were doing, so for about 20 seconds we were just sort of like that. And I said, well, this is pretty funny. And she was like, no, it's not. So immediately I thought, oh, flip. You know, alarm bells were ringing. Brought her over, sat her down, I said, anything to eat? She said, yeah, I'll have a salad. I thought, salad? For a meal? Yeah. Yeah, I haven't eaten all day in preparation for this. You can have that's the bit on the plate I leave. Salad. And then I got her a drink, and she wanted this really posh wine. I thought, oh, flippin' heck, who am I with, the Queen of England? Anyway, my friend Richard, who's married, he was giving me some tips on how to talk to girls and stuff. And he says, you know, just ask them about themselves, talk about trivial things. So I thought, right, okay, I can do that. And so I said, Matilda, this was her name. I said, Matilda, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And she said, idiot, honestly. She said, oh, probably to feel no pain. I thought, no pain? That's not superpower. That's not superpower at all. I said this. I said, that's not superpower. She said, oh yeah, but it'd be great. I mean, you could do anything you want. You wouldn't feel pain. I said, no, you're confusing the sensation of pain with injury. That's very different. She said, how do you mean? I said, well, for example, if I was to put my hand on a radiator and feel pain, that pain tells me that I should take my hand off and therefore not do damage to myself. She said, yeah, but it wouldn't really matter if you did damage to yourself because you don't feel the pain. I said, it would matter. You are confused, woman. It would matter very much. Are you saying to me, I said, are you saying to me that if you could have any power in the world, it would be to be a paraplegic? She didn't like this at all. She said, you know, okay, just calm down. I said, no, you're being an idiot. I was getting really angry. I said, you're being an idiot. She said, Tom, I think you should just calm down, count to 10, and then think about what you say. So I looked at her now and I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think you're being an idiot. That wasn't, I shouldn't have done that. That was silly, but I was getting so annoyed. So it went quiet for a bit. Food came over. Plate of chips for me, obviously, because I'm a lad. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to do something here. This is going terribly. So I asked her about herself. I said, what do you do? Turns out she was an evolutionary biologist. I thought, oh, here we go. I said, well, that's interesting, everything, but I don't actually agree with evolution. She said, what? I said, yeah, I don't agree with evolution. I didn't like her, honestly. I said, case in point, the walrus. You know, what's that fat slob ever done to, you know, prove his worth? When's he had to fight for his survival? The sloth! You know, the clue's in the name. What's a sloth done? It just sort of sits around, it doesn't do anything. How are dinosaurs extinct and yet sloths exist? And I could tell this, you know, she started thinking, hang on, he might be, has he just disproved 200 years of evolutionary theory? So this was obviously, it was pretty cool. And then but again, you know, I was trying to be civil, trying to be nice. So I said, forget that. What's your favourite animal? And she said, the dolphin. I thought, for goodness sake, the amount of people. Oh, I'd love to go swimming with dolphins. Why? Why would you love to? I've done it. I was 10. We were on a family holiday in Orlando. I got bullied into doing it by my dad. Obviously, I did do it because I wanted to prove myself and everything. But you know, you're essentially taking your clothes off in public, and when you're as pale and pear-shaped as me, that's not fun. You're then stepping into cold water and putting your life in the hands of a mischievous water-dwelling mammal. You know, you hold its fin and its top, whatever they're called, the fins. Your parents are being, oh, go on, Tom, you can do it. And you think, oh, flippin' heck, here we go. And then it starts going, the water's spraying in your face, you can't breathe, and then just faster and faster. Mum! Mum! Horrible. Absolutely horrible. The whole time the thing's laughing at you with this, not good. And I said this, and then she sort of, you know, at this point, she finished a mouthful, put a knife full down, and she said, look, this isn't working, and left. I thought, yeah, see you later. She said, "You're a dick." I said, "Yeah, I am a dick. I was a dick. I shouldn't have. I mean, I should have